Christmas. I love Christmas. I love Christmas specials. Donna. I love Donna. Most of us love Donna. Donna came to us in a Christmas special, The Runaway Bride. It's a really interesting episode full of pathos and interesting characterizations and so much music. So that's what we're discussing today, The Runaway Bride. We being myself, Neo from Australia, along with Ingiga from England, and the welcome return of Miraz from the USA. Miraz, what do you think of The Runaway Bride?
Wait. Hold on.
Yeah.
Wait, we're watching the Donna episode, Runaway Bride? Fuck, man, I watched the movie with fucking Julia Roberts.
I thought you were about to say you watched the Sherlock episode with the bride in it.
It's basically the same. I mean, Richard Gere did play Dr. T, so...
Just you make up the difference. We'll just pretend and we'll suture it all together. It'll work in the edit.
Well, what do you remember of the Donna episode, Miraz? Do you remember liking the Donna one?
Well, the first time I watched it would have been during my initial binge, and it all sort of ran together as it does, when you binge watch things like that. So this time, getting to watch it and really luxuriate in it, I was struck by the fact that these Davies Christmas specials usually don't have much to do with Christmas, do they? They're set at Christmas, but I mean, when Moffat shows up, the very first Christmas special he does is literally a Christmas carol. I don't know. I like it. I like it a lot. It is. I understand that it's not that well beloved, but I find it to be charming and incredible fun.
Yeah, I mean, if you rank it among the 10 Christmas specials, we were just saying, weren't we? It's probably the best one.
Yeah.
Easily, I reckon.
Because, you've got the Christmas Invasion, you've got Voyage of the Damned, The Next Doctor, and The End of Time Part 1. These are not some of the greatest episodes RTD has written in his career. So next to those, Runaway Bride, it has a point to it. And it's focused on the relationship between the Doctor and Donna, which has really endearing aspects to it. It's got a real human heart to it. There's lots of stupid, ridiculous spectacle in there. But you've also got basically an emotional through line, especially with the Doctor being all sad about Rose and being all lonely God and shit. It does basically work.
Yeah.
It's not annoying like the other RTD specials. The Christmas Invasion, I find just very dull. I don't like that. There's a lot of ways that episode doesn't work for me. Voyage of the Damned.
I like the Christmas Invasion, but...
You like Christmas Invasion? Yeah.
But I see what you mean. It's an episode that's consciously not about the Doctor running around having adventures.
Voyage of the Damned is just the that's not nah. Yeah. The Next Doctor is so forgettable. I usually forget about it. I like the idea of it. I just don't like the way it was actually done. I guess it's harmless. The End of Time, there's stuff I love and there's stuff I hate. Very high highs, very low lows.
Yeah.
But The Runaway Bride, I think, is just actually good. It's very active. It's very pacey. The whole thing gets started really quickly. There's loads of character stuff. Donna is a really, really set out character right from the start. She gets so much interesting material. The Doctor's got actual characterization stuff he's dealing with. Just everything's working here. It's not pushing itself too hard. It's not trying to be the biggest spectacle ever. It's a big spectacle, but it's also very character focused. It's really, really good. And I like the Christmassy stuff in it, and that it's really uncomfortable, real feeling Christmas stuff. The same way that when Wilf gets a Christmas present at the end of time and it has really nothing to do with him and he has a kind of awkward moment over that. Mm-hmm. That feels like a real Christmas sort of beat. And The Runaway Bride is just full of that sort of stuff. The awkward Christmas parties, the sadness you get on Christmas as well as the happiness. I think Russell's really good at that.
Yeah.
I really like this episode. But Gig, what do you think?
Yeah, I think totally the resentment that Donna kind of experiences from various people around her and her family, the whole, just those awkward relationships, that unpleasantness, that is kind of almost truer to Christmas than all the blooming trees and shit and robot Santas or whatever are. And I think it's like Donna says herself, right? She hates Christmas, and that's kind of potentially implied to be why she's having her wedding now. So there's something else happening instead of Christmas. So it is a sweet kind of anti-Christmas special in that way. That's pretty good. It strikes me that whereas other Christmas specials, they do tend to be high on spectacle and ridiculous large shit happening, for a long period, at the start of this episode at least, I mean, how much of it is just the Doctor and Donna running after taxis, right? There's something that feels quite low stakes, small scale about it for a lot of it runtime. At least before we go and we have the giant spider, the Dawn of the Earth and stuff, it does feel quite contained in a way that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things about Davies just in general is the way that the fantastical emerges out of the domestic with his material. And this episode has it almost literally. In fact, genuinely literally, it's right in the text. And I just love that. And his sense of contrasts.
I love that in the start, like when Donna's just trying to get back to the wedding and trying to get a taxi, the doctor seems really, really eager to help her. He seems almost desperate to try and help her. He's been roped into her little quest, her little adventure, and I think it's just, even though she's kind of being abrasive to him, and he's kind of feels kind of worn down by kind of how like rude and kind of chaotic she is. I think the earnestness of the fact that they just trying to solve this thing, and he does actually feel for her being taken away from her wedding. I think it's an easy way to strike up just that fundamental rapport between them.
Yeah, and it helps a lot to make the Doctor a more likable character.
Totally.
Especially, it was pointed out to me that with the Christmas specials, you've got a whole audience that normally doesn't watch Doctor Who, sort of being forced to watch Doctor Who. And so it's very important to make the Doctor a likable and relatable character, or maybe relatable is the wrong word to use, but you know what I mean. To make him likable and approachable. And it's a very savvy way to do it, is to have him put all of his oncoming storm energy into something as simple as getting a taxi for this woman so she can get back to the church.
And Donna kind of represents like the non-Who watching kind of audience, doesn't she? Because she has her own life going on, and of course, obviously, she's played by Catherine Tate, who was a separate cultural phenomenon in Britain at the time. She had her own show, and she was here as a guest star, basically.
Yeah, and of course, she doesn't watch Doctor Who. She missed all of the previous episodes.
Yeah, I think Mears and I don't really get. Well, I mean, we sort of get. But I think viewers not from Britain don't get how big Catherine Tate was when this came out. Like this is like a huge star crossover in a way that it's not like a little thing of getting David Bamber in Series 8 or something, right? This is like a big. I love David Bamber. I don't know why I was just mean to him, but this is like a big deal to get Catherine Tate right at this period of time. Gig British perspective.
Yeah, and the fact that she's known for playing these like really broad comedy characters kind of informs how Donna is written. Because, I mean, I think over the years, kind of this episode maybe gets some flack for kind of the way it kind of runs Donna down in places as a character. Like, it shows her being really, like, needy, and that whole sequence where we get flashbacks to how she, like, insisted and kind of begged Lance to marry her and kind of nagged him over and over and over. And then she lies about that to the Doctor. And how, it's easy to look at that and go, wow, RTD hates Donna, he's so contemptuous of Donna. But this is the kind of character that Tate would actually, like, play. I think these slightly, absurd figures, these really broad, kind of, like, slightly unhinged women, and that's kind of why that's part of her appeal. So I think writing that into the show, and also ultimately making her like sympathetic, and kind of even, I think in a way the episode even makes pain to try and celebrate, I think, the kind of mundane life that she has, her little her small like fixations and things she is really into.
Yeah,
she gets that. There's that whole monologue from Lance kind of berating her for that. But ultimately, it's because she's not obsessed with the big picture. It's because she's actually living her life. Whereas Lance kind of hating her for that is portrayed as a bad thing.
What do you guys make of the idea that Lance represents a certain kind of Doctor Who fan?
Well, he does say he wants to go travel space, basically. I'd forgotten that from the last time I watched the episode a few years ago, but that's like his motivation, is he wants to, the Rachnos is going to empower him to go travel time, and well, I don't know about time, but space at least, like the Doctor.
He seems more interested into like the big, fantastical space sci-fi element, and hates the domestic drudgery, I guess you might put it.
He's a classic Who fan.
Yeah. I like that. I also like the idea of, with the Rachnos Queen being obviously the last of her kind, except for all of her babies, he's essentially her companion. She's the evil Doctor of the episode. And I always like that sort of very simple counterpart storytelling, because it's very easy to bounce ideas off of that sort of reflection.
Yeah, the Rachnos being a cracked mirror of the Doctor is one of those things that if you haven't watched the episode in a while, you're liable to just forget because it's so left field. I think perhaps a giant. You remember the giant crazy spider hamming it up, chewing up the scenery, but you forget that she was like she was kind of compared with the Doctor. She was contrasted with the Doctor, and she had this companion of sorts. I think he doesn't even just represent Doctor Who fans, like classic Who fans, so much as just a snobbery. I think that does exist in society. I think that with that whole rant that he has at Donna, all your gossip and your whatevers, all that stuff. I think that is a real thing. It's not just like a sci-fi fan thing. I think there is a degree of in strata of the society, there is that contempt does actually exist. I think, and there are all kinds of things in there.
Yeah,
and I think it's just in likening that to this anti-human obsession with the abstract and the cosmic and the larger picture kind of mindset. I think it's just drawing attention to the inhumanity of it. I think the episode is really focused on just the basic humanity of having a small life and the meanings that you attach to small things in your life.
The Lance monologue is really, really depressing. Like it's so crushing. The height of excitement is a new flavor Pringle. I had to sit there and listen to all that yap, yap, yap. Brad and Angelina is posh, pregnant, X Factor, split ends, the never-ending fountain of fat, stupid trivia. I deserve a medal.
That's a pretty good description of Series 1, actually, now that I think about it. New flavor of Kronkburger.
I'm sure a lot of us have been in situations where someone has said something, well, at least I have been in situations where someone has said something like that to you. And it's not just the, like, treating you like you're small and your interests like you're small. The medal thing is like the, look how noble I am for putting up with how awful and small and nothing you are. It's such an awful little relatable, very RTD moment, and you feel so much for Donna there, and you hate Lance so much there. It's great bit of writing.
And we have to disagree with Donna later at the end when she and the Doctor concur that he didn't deserve to be eaten by baby spiders at the core of the Earth, because I think we all know he did.
He did.
After saying that shit. 100%.
In Doctor Who terms, he did.
And also, poisoning Donna with coffee and Q1 particles for 6 months. That's pretty bad.
Of course, the whole being eaten by baby spiders, the morality of that is so fucking complicated, especially later on when she comes back. Does he deserve it or not? I don't know. If he deserves it, then surely a great chunk of London does as well. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
And, would you miss it?
Good question.
I think the Lance stuff, whether he deserves it or not, when he's kind of justifying what he's just said to Donna, he says it was easy for him because Donna loved him. The big picture is what he thinks of. What's the point of it all if the human race is nothing? That's what the Empress can give me, the chance to go out there to see it, the size of it all. He reminds me of, do you know those people where they think they seem so smart and like suave and Byronic or something by saying this, but they're like, oh, I hate small talk. Like, I can't stand doing small talk with people. I can only talk about the big stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and then it's just people that are really, really rude, basically, and they think they're being clever or different or something by not engaging.
The Sigma male.
And they can never really handle the big talk.
No. It's like they think they're a genius for working out there's a social function to talking beyond actual just exchanging information. Like, they think they're so clever for like, oh, I don't want to just talk about the weather. But they're really stupid for not getting, when we talk about the weather, we're not just talking about the weather. We're having like a social communique there. Like, there's a point to that. Lance really seems to me like one of those Reddity types of like, I can't stand people are gossiping about things, and that's they're so stupid, and I want to go talk about space. He's like literally like a Reddity type. I only want to talk about space, and it only matters to talk about whether aliens are real. I'm not going to talk about celebrities with my mum. That's so stupid. Fuck mum. I only want to talk about the aliens. He's a very realistic kind of person, I think, and I really hate that type of person.
At the end of the day, it's very easy to kind of engage with the abstract and the things that are completely off in space and out of the realm of, the cosmic. It's quite difficult and, well, it can be quite difficult and challenging to actually confront other human beings and just talk to them like people and listen to people.
It's avoidant, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, people with actual lives. So it is ultimately avoiding, the difficult route and taking refuge in, I guess, just giving up, really. Yeah.
I'm sure when I was like 13, I'm sure I said something Lance-esque there a couple of times where I was like, oh.
I think we've all said something Lance-esque.
And I think what it was for me, at least, it was probably more anxiety over, I feel awkward in social situations, or I feel uncomfortable talking, to certain people. And therefore to like protect my ego, I'm going to dress it up with, well, actually, I'm just too cool for school. And, actually, I don't talk about the weather, not because I feel awkward talking to people I don't know well, but because I'm smarter than the weather. And I can only talk about stuff I feel really confident about, like Fallout New Vegas or something, like, the big things that really matter. So,
Yeah, that's why I hate small talk too. It's because I'm bad at it.
Yeah.
So speaking of, I asked Neo something privately, and he didn't give me a qualitative answer. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to foist it on both of you live on air. Is it rude, I guess, or small-minded, or foolish to notice that Catherine Tate is really, really hot in this episode?
Just this one?
Well, in that scene, when she's on top of the
thing, whatever that is.
thing out in the river, the Thames, whatever, tower thing.
The flood barrier thing.
The barrier thing. She's high up in the air, and it's Christmas, it's December, and it's night out, and she's wearing basically nothing, and it's all soaking wet. She must have been on the verge of death in this episode. And then the doctor makes it snow on top of all of that. Frankly, it's irresponsible, if you ask me.
They filmed this in the warmer months.
Oh, I'm sure it was filmed in fucking June or something. I'm not talking about the actual actress. I'm just an amusing thought that it's probably one of the most perilous moments for the character, just based on physical reality.
It did strike me how young she and Tennant looked in this episode. Like, their faces, they don't look like the people that have aged much, because you look at them in the 60s and they seem like very, very similar looking, but they really do look like babies here in comparison.
Especially Tennant, he looks about 5. Well, while we're on the general subject matter, just one question. Was Lance actually the Rachnos' consort? Because there was a sex joke made in that vein. I wonder, did RTD really mean that?
Man, I would. I don't care. A Drider? Hell, she even has a shitty sense of humor, which is, my type. So...
I love her stupid jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is one of the more memorable, I think, ridiculous RTD villains. Just because he really goes so far with her dialogue. I think he giving all those kind of quips and stuff.
You're supposed to say, "I do."
The actress was in huge amounts of pain filming, because that was
we can tell. It shows.
Yeah.
Now, extraordinary work from the design department and Neil Gorton's prosthetics team, Millennium Effects. Absolutely amazing. In one of the early tone meetings, there was a whole discussion about, okay, would we do the CGI, which I think everyone assumed we would, or would we build a prosthetic? And it was Russell and the big discussion around the table to just try something different, to give a different feel to that monster, to kind of literally, obviously put it in the room, go for that scale. And it does feel different.
It does. Yeah, no, it's absolutely...
It feels something new for our Doctor Who.
We used to laugh.
It was absolutely, all of it was absolutely in the room. There was about 4 people working Sarah's lower half and kind of wheeking her up and down on a seesaw, effectively.
Yeah.
She was kneeling into the big
cradle,
prosthetic, and kind of leaning forward like she was on the front of an old sailing ship, really. She was in quite a lot of pain from quite early on. Fairly dosed up on fairly high-grade painkillers to get through the day. But she did her entire performance, I think, in 3 or 4 days, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it was a very intensive time for her. She roared herself hoarse as well.
She was amazing.
But she just went for it on every single take.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and my understanding is she wanted to do the episode, but only if she could get to be a giant freaky monster.
Yeah.
And she truly is one of the most giant and freakiest monsters that he delivers. Really a memorable performance. I would say miles beyond the Absorbaloff.
I think she's awesome. It was something new for the show to do a huge, actual physically there creature. I'm sure it hurt a lot. I just think it's so cool. It's something you don't see this in later eras where we get CGI scorpions or whatever, and you don't see this earlier on in Classic Who where they probably couldn't really pull that off. I just think it actually looks real. I mean, you can tell it's a woman in a weird. What do you even call that? It's not a suit. It's a huge thing, but you can tell she's actually there, which is awesome.
And she's doing something with her performance that's so specific and so deliberate that you really have to respect it, even if like towards the end when she's going, my children, no, my children. Yeah, it tips into bathos at that point. But I think certainly, when it comes to the quips and being villainy and hamming it up, it's pretty. It's as good as it gets, really, isn't it? I mean, how can you possibly improve it?
Yeah.
The whole point of the episode, I think, it doesn't play to us as much now. We watch it, in 2023 or whenever. If you watch it years later than 2008, you're fine, basically. But it's obviously trying to recycle or cycle and process and get people over Rose.
Very poorly, too.
Kind of launch. It's kind of like, the 60th are a bridge into let's move beyond New Who. And this is a bridge of trying to go. I think it's hard now because we've all seen Rose gets a kind of happy ending in series 4, whatever you think of that. The show deals with Rose.
Yeah, she keeps coming back, too.
Yeah. But in 2006, like I remember this vividly, Rose wasn't like a companion in 2005 and 2006.
She was the star.
Rose was the show. Yeah, the show was Rose.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like we're moving from, like getting rid of Sarah Jane was a big deal. And, the show kind of had a liminal era with Deadly Assassin next, but it moved on. And Classic Who moves on, and New Who after Rose, it tended to move on with the companions. Like it makes a huge deal when they exit. Like you kind of need the snowmen to get over the ponds, but it does kind of get over it because none of the stars really eclipse the show after Rose, I don't think. Like obviously Clara, the character kind of eclipsed the show, so the show had to do a huge thing there, but the show could survive without Jenna Coleman just fine. Rose, it couldn't really. Like Billy, people were watching for Rose was the whole point. I remember this so much with how the show was airing back in the 2000s. So I think I understand why RTD felt he needed to do something, and I do think he needed to do something.
We had to face the problem of ending Series 2 on, like, the saddest scenes in the world of upset and heartbreak, and it is my job to make sure people don't go, oh, well, that's finished then, and switch off.
What? What?
So I love the fact that he hasn't even got the luxury of relaxing, going, oh, I'm sad now, because his life just is never like that.
Who are you?
Suddenly there's a bride right on his doorstep, literally inside his doorstep.
Where am I?
What?
And on top of that, there's an even greater mystery of how she got there.
What the hell is this place?
What?
It's just setting up a premise saying, look, Doctor Who doesn't end. Lovely, lovely Rose Tyler might have left. Lovely Billy might have left. But this is about the Doctor, and his life continues and will always continue, and it moves on. And here's another adventure starting seconds after the disaster of Doomsday.
I don't know if Series 3's dealing with it was necessary, but I think what the Runaway did with it, it makes sense to me. I think that was... You'd have to do a very pacey episode, and you had to not ignore it, but you had to really turn people quickly on. But you got to keep watching because we're doing all this cool stuff. It's so similar to the 60th when I think about it.
You got to have a big figure to replace her, but you got to bring in a big figure like Catherine Tate to replace
a big force. Yeah,
a big figure like Billie Piper.
I think there's kind of 3 actual beats to do with the Rose thing. At the start, we have the abducting woman thing, where Rose's top is around the TARDIS, and Donna makes a comment about him abducting women, and he gets spiky about it. Then you have the flashback in the middle, which the producers went back and forth on whether it was too much or not to put that in there. I'm really glad they did, though. That's probably my favorite scene of the episode, the Love Don't Roam scene. I love everything about that scene.
So now, big discussion about what comes up here with the flashback to Rose. Should we have it? Should we have it not?
Oh, really?
Yeah, really big discussion.
It was always an in-script I read.
Yeah, it was always in the script, but we did have a big chat in the Fine Cut about whether we wanted the flashback of it and whether it was too sad, whether it was taking us too far back. And in the end, it's just so emotional, it's so beautiful.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what I was getting at earlier, that idea that when we were filming it, Rose's story was so present for us all.
Yeah.
And now, sort of 6 months on, you wonder, from a story point of view, is it better to just kind of get going again? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the fact is, it would be very...
But the balance now feels right to me on this Fine Cut. And
I don't want to...
Without giving it away, that last line of the episode feels absolutely right.
No, I mean, I think it's true and correct and proper that the Doctor, who has literally picked up seconds after we left him, saying goodbye to the love of his life, it would be rather callous if that wasn't recognised.
Well, it's got to be dramatically truthful.
Yeah,
Even if
yeah.
you are a 900-year-old Time Lord, it's truthful.
Oh yeah, listen, 900 years gives you a lot longer to
Exactly.
get lonely.
And then we have at the end, well, I guess him going all torturous with the spiders is built off there being no Rose in a way, but you have the actual exchange. Her name was Rose. You got to travel with someone, Doctor. Go meet Martha. Does that work for you? Like the three-pronged, how the episode deals with Rose? How do you guys think of how the episode handles that?
I really do think that it handles it well. I feel like, honestly, it is season 3 that lets things down because,
Yeah.
I mean, yes, Rose is a big role to fill, but the way you deal with that is you fill the role. You don't continue to, you don't drag down your next co-star by constantly comparing.
Yeah.
Again, that's outside the scope of this episode, which I think is appropriately digesting a serious change in how the show works. Because while the Doctor is the main character and the title character and all, and of course David Tennant is a huge rising star at this point, he's not really the star of the show like Billy Piper was. So you would have to take time, digest it, work through it. And I like how they work through it. If I'm being more specific about the beats in particular, I really like the first one. It's one of my favorite examples of the Doctor sort of mourning a past companion, because it doesn't drudge into wangstiness like the Snowmen did, even though I like the Ponds a lot and I like the Snowmen a lot. I think the Doctor retiring to Victorian London for like a century or however long he's out there is a bit beyond that. To be honest, I always forget about the Love Don't Roam scene. A large part of that is I just don't really care for the vocalist Horan or whatever his name is.
What?
I'm sorry. I've always preferred the other guy who sang "Song for 10."
I can't believe this.
Well, I mean, eventually we were going to break up over something.
You know the reverence with which, I guess, New Who in general, like later on, tends to treat like Hartnell, like older Doctors like that. I mean, Billie Piper was kind of the Hartnell of New Who, wasn't she?
She is, yeah.
So she's treated here like that. I mean, she is senior to Tennant. She was there before Tennant was on the show.
Mm-hmm.
So we've just got a newbie Doctor here. I think the way this episode approaches the Rose thing is that it shows Donna learning about Rose and the nature of Rose's relationship with the Doctor, like the closeness there. So it's kind of like she's learning about the lore in a way, like the ancient reverent lore of Rose.
Yeah.
And like the mythos, like Rose has been elevated to mythos now. And what's clever about it is that Donna, I guess, discovering that Rose existed and then learning more and more, coming to understand about Rose, is kind of how she gets closer to the Doctor. Because at the start, she finds the top and she's like, oh, this woman you've abducted, what happened to her? Right? But then a bit later on, when the Doctor's trying to convince Donna to jump in the TARDIS, like Rose comes up again and like, is this what you said to your friend? Is this what happened to her? What happened? Did she survive? But then the Doctor gets to be like, she's so alive, she is fine, that's great, she makes me smile, and that's what convinces Donna to take the leap. And at the end, of course, at the very end, Donna is so interested and kind of compassionate for the Doctor. She wants to she can tell that the Doctor is suffering because of Rose, and that is kind of leads her to make gestures of compassion towards the Doctor. So Rose is kind of the way that they become closer, and that's a clever way to handle it, compared to the Doctor just like pushing Donna away because of Rose, which is what we get with Martha ultimately.
I love in the Love Don't Roam scene, the being at like a party celebration sort of thing where you're out of sync with everyone because you're missing something or someone. I love that. It's very Davis. It's very relatable. It's very emotional.
Oh, yeah.
The trawling through a phone, even instead of like engaging with anyone socially, that's kind of Lance Redditor-esque, I suppose, but it suits the Doctor.
I was going to say that's like almost forward looking. I don't feel like that was as common in 2007, 2008 as it is nowadays.
Yeah.
It's me at every fucking party.
The looking around at people and getting like the pangs of like memories or longing and that's so, I love that they kept the flashback in. I don't think that was over-egging it. I think that just puts you in his brain so much in that moment.
I'll be honest, I had totally forgotten that Nerys was like a substitute Rose figure. And thinking that with that in mind, it completely recolors every future interaction between Donna and Neris. To think of that as being like her surrogate Rose that she's reacting against is a hilarious idea.
I'd forgotten that Neris was actually like someone we saw. Like in my head, she just become like that mythical figure that Donna always mentions. I'd completely forgotten that Neris was an actual on-screen character in that episode. That was so crazy to rediscover.
She's also in The End of Time and a few other things.
Yeah.
Oh god.
She's for some reason this woman she hates. She keeps inviting to her weddings. But then I guess we all have people like that.
It's like the Doctor and the Master, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the hybrid, the friend inside the enemy, you know? It's like Series 9 all over again.
Oh my god, Neris is the fucking hybrid!
Yes!
RTD solved it right at the start.
I love those flashbacks of the blonde hair. What I love about that is I love doing things with I guess with your visual real estate on the screen, I guess. So having a shot that you film to look and visually imitate a shot from a previous episode that you've edited in. I love stuff like that. I love just playing with the actual physical space on the screen.
Yeah.
So the sweep of someone's blonde hair matches up visually with a cut to Rose. I mean, I can't not love stuff like that. I love being willing to actually play with the visuals like that for storytelling reasons.
A link, this is also to do with play, I suppose. A link with so we had a first era of Christmas specials from Christmas Invasion to Twat, and then we had the interregnum where we didn't have any, and then we having them again, starting with the Church on Ruby Road, and the Church on Ruby Road has a bespoke song in the Goblin Song.
So did Christmas Invasion.
Yeah, so did Christmas Invasion with Song for 10, which is nice enough, but Love Don't Roam I really, really like because I feel like it's much more, it's getting to the characterization of the Doctor in like a fun way, in an interesting way. I like the lyrics of it, which is, we've got lines like,
well, I've roamed about this earth with just a suitcase in my hand, and I've met some bug-eyed Joes, I've met the blessed, I've met the damned, but of all the strange, strange creatures in the air, at sea, on land, oh my girl, my precious girl, I love you, you understand.
All the strange, strange creatures comes out of this song, the lyrics for this song, and that becomes, the big hype theme, in Series 3 for like rising tension and stuff in the show. And I love that the song's from the perspective of the Doctor. I
didn't know that the title came from the lyric and not vice versa. That's...
Yeah.
I think what I think is really cool about Love Don't Roam is that it's not a scene that like screams for a bespoke musical number. Like it's not set up as like big musical number scene, or like it's kind of unassuming in that way. Like a lesser showrunner could have done this scene with just a licensed song from somewhere playing in the background, sad romantic song. So the fact that it's a fully original song that's doing its entirely own thing, that is just like an extra dose of love, heaped onto this episode just to make it better. So that's really cool. And I love stuff like that. I love the willingness to write an entire original song just to be in the background while, not like a huge amount of action is happening. It's just the Doctor like being moody in the room.
His mood's just like suffusing the show. Like we got the flashbacks and the party atmosphere itself, and then the song. Another verse is, I've wondered, I've rambled, I've crossed this crowded sphere.
I have wondered, I have rambled, I have crossed this crowded sphere, and I've seen a mess of problems that I long to disappear. Now all I have is this anguished heart, for you have vanished too. Oh my girl, my precious girl, just what is this man to do?
And then later on, you took me in, you stole my heart, I cannot roam no more, because love, it stays with you, it doesn't wash up on a shore. Shore has connections with Rose too, of course.
Well, you took me in, you stole my heart, I cannot roam no more, because love, it stays within you, it doesn't wash up on the shore. And a fighting man forgets each cut, each knock, each bruise, each fall, but a fighting man cannot forget why his love don't roam no more.
Why his love don't roam no more. It's so sad. The song repeats the reel me in, my precious girl, come on, take me home, my body's tired of traveling, and my heart don't wish to roam. That's the main refrain. There is an interesting bit towards the end. Walk with me, oh my love, walk tall, walk proud, walk far, for you know my love, you are my shining star, you are.
Yeah, walk with me, my love, walk tall, walk proud, walk far.
that like is he glorifying Rose there? Is that what's he saying there?
Maybe it's a reference to the giant Rachnos star over London, because Christmas. There's also a kind of nativity imagery in there, isn't it? Like following a star in the sky to your destination. A classic RTD kind of Christianity worming its way in.
Earlier when I was saying that his Christmas specials tend not to be much about Christmas, the part that comes to mind is the end of time, and maybe this is the wrong time to bring this up, really feels like an almost inverted, like the master is making himself immortal and putting all of his sins onto every human in like a reverse Easter sort of thing, like a reverse Jesus. It's a very interesting take on the Antichrist, I guess. I don't know. That's just a thought that keeps coming to mind when I think about Davies and his sort of treatment of Christianity, especially around Christmas.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because, Christmas imagery suffuses British culture so much. So in doing the Christmas specials, RTD kind of creates these Doctor Who stories that, whether directly or otherwise, always seem to can be infested by, I guess, the spirit of Christmas or the ghost of Christmas or, the Christmas mythos and such. So you get like the giant star in the sky, which is like a giant spider web thing that's killing people.
Evil Christmas star, evil Christmas trees, evil Santa Clauses. I like the robot Santas. I wish they'd come back. They were always a fun presence.
Yeah, I kind of wish the robot Santas didn't lose the Santa masks and reveal generic robot heads underneath. I wish they were just robot Santas, design, I wish they were just still Santa underneath. That would make me happy.
I agree, but I do like the sort of parallel idea of pulling down the mall Santa's beard and discovering that it's just a normal guy under there. Pulling off the robot Santa's head to discover that it's just a normal robot under there. They are basically evil mall Santas, is what I love about them.
Did you notice how loud the orchestra was this episode?
Wasn't that just every episode?
Yeah, I was going to say.
The show's moving into its fully orchestrated era by now. Because, series 1 was the synths and then more money for the music. And so this and series 3 are when we really start bursting out with everything.
So massive score from Murray Gold kicking in here with the Orchestra of Wales, the National Orchestra of Wales, BBC Orchestra.
There's a lot more actual orchestra on this than ever before, isn't there?
Yeah, there really is. We went a bit mad on this episode.
Yeah.
We just wanted a big full sound. So yes.
That really struck me watching it is, wow, this was a loud one. Very music heavy. I love the Doctor's theme when Donna and Ten are having that conversation outside at the end. I really like that reprise there.
It kind of starts to define the musical direction of New Who for a long time, because there are music cues in this episode that you're hearing much later. It seems to go on.
Yeah.
like it casts a long shadow, I think.
Yeah.
You can really hear it starting to form here. Like this episode really influential in its way.
Moffat, I read I can't remember when exactly I heard him say this, but it was recently him saying that his favorite use of music is when it's very, very loud and played over the exposition scenes. What was that from? That was recent that I saw that. That must have been.
It's from the 60th concert.
There we go. Yeah.
As a writer, how much consideration do you give to what music can bring to the show?
Well, I just hope and pray it will play during the explanatory scenes quite loudly. No.
Well, the related thing is, very shortly before this episode came out, they had a concert for the music, kind of like the Proms, where David Tennant presented it. It was the first time they showed off the scene of the TARDIS down the road as well, with the music and everything to a crowd. And in the Doctor Who Confidential episode for the Runaway Bride, which is mostly about that concert, because the Confidential episode aired a few hours before the Runaway Bride, so they couldn't really talk about the Runaway Bride too much.
That's weird.
In that, Russell talks about how having an audience actually watch Doctor Who like live, like with the orchestra, and having the audience all clap and make noises.
I think that's how Doctor Who should be shown, with 2,000 people sitting in an auditorium. Because there's a bit in that clip we played where the TARDIS appears coming to the rescue, and he got a round of applause. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, who does that in my head? That's always what it sounds like, but 2,000 people are clapping. And finally we got it.
For him to be able to see the audience clap and cheer and react.
What a shame that he missed the era of cinematic Who, huh? Oh, well, maybe it'll come again. You know what? If anybody can,
they should bring that back. Let's have actual screenings of episodes with the orchestra.
Yeah. I actually, not that it's particularly relevant, I watched this episode in a virtual cinema, and it's great fun. It actually plays really well at a large scale. It helps when you can sense that the speakers around you are massive. It helps disguise the fact that the mixing isn't very good.
It's interesting that it's playing on such like a large register, both, you know, the most bombastic music, and it's in the story, it's doing this idea of the small scale versus the large scale. It's almost like the, Donna sees witnesses the birth of the Earth, right? So it's all about that contrast of her going from her mundane life to this is the biggest, most insane thing that has ever happened. Like this is the entire like genesis of the Earth, and my life is just like being like massively expanded all at once. So it's interesting. I think the storytelling kind of echoes, I think, like the character. And of course, you've got the entire Thames poured down a little hole.
Yeah.
You've got the biggest spider we've ever done, biggest, crisis we've ever, it's great.
I love that. I love the idea of the Rachnos hive being the actual core of the Earth. It's very, when I first got invited to do this, I was thinking, I should do a joke about a stupid wiki article I wrote like 5-10 years ago about the idea that the Rachnos hive taking up the spot that it did is secretly what turned the sun against us, and it's why the sun keeps trying to kill us in Doctor Who.
Interesting.
And of course, the ultimate result of this, of course, is that we eventually come into conflict with the actual third planet from the sun, not the Rachnos hive taking up the spot, but the real planet, Mondas. Which reframes all of the concept that keeps coming up in Doctor Who, that there is something about the Earth that is almost magnetized towards conflict with the rest of our solar system. I mean, it comes up in Image of the Fendal. What was the other? That doesn't matter. It's a very Davies idea that there's something there's something naturally wrong or incorrect about the Earth itself, and that somehow that equates to us being in constant peril, I guess.
I feel like that thing of what if the Earth is artificial, that's kind of a recurring theme in like weird fiction, kind of horror, cosmic horror sorts of fiction. I think it's meant to echo, I guess, that the fundamental strangeness of existence itself, and that kind of weird aloneness that we have in the universe. Like, how are we sentient? How are we alive? How low are the chances of anything like us happening at all? So I think it's that kind of being expressed in this other way, like through, okay, well, what if the Earth actually is just like an abomination that was not meant to be here?
Yeah.
What if that's actually actually just true. So I think, yeah, it's cool. I like that idea of like the Rachnos and the artificiality of Earth kind of being a justification for just the weird narrative importance of Earth kind of throughout Who.
I really like it. It feels sacrilegious, right, that the Earth starts with a big spider thing in the start of it, because that's not how the Earth actually started. And hey, so you're saying through Classic Who, there was this big spider thing in the center of the Earth.
I think I see where you're going with this.
It feels sacrilegious, but I really like that, because it's like, I think the episode is sort of saying it's still beautiful despite that. Like it doesn't matter that thing was how the Earth started. It's still beautiful. We know what humans made out of that, and what the Silurians, I guess, and what the Earth in general made out of that. Because I think it's similar to Donna. She must feel so crushed and like her life was a lie after the Lance revelation, and much later on, what happens to her after series 4.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's like a mirror of it.
Yeah, she's still beautiful, and her life still means something, even if it was kind of built on a lie. Or, a memory wipe or whatever.
Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. That's really good, yeah. The place I was thinking of was, it also sort of, it serves as a prelude to the moon egg later on.
Yeah.
I was going to make some sort of extremely belabored joke about how when the Rachnos children hatch and eat all of humanity, it's okay because they're going to lay a perfect replica of humanity on Earth.
I mean, they can just press the button again and form a new Earth, like attract more like space debris and just make a new planet. Why not? Yeah? Wait another billion or so years.
I've been thinking about it, and is this not just the first time in Doctor Who, but possibly in all of science fiction, where normal tanks are able to take down the enemy spaceship? The Christmas web is, I think, probably one of the less impressive alien attacks that we've seen in the show. And obviously it's because it's missing its whole crew. They're all still waiting to be born.
Yeah, I think the moment when it starts just randomly extending electric blast to kind of carve up some pavements and stuff, I think
yeah,
it's one of those moments you can kind of feel the show like needing that extra bit of spectacle and maybe overreaching itself ever so slightly.
Yeah,
you can never really. It's hard to really feel that sense of like, oh my god, this is destruction, death, people are dying. It always just feels like, oh, this is just drunken mayhem, isn't it? It's just Christmas.
Yeah, it does not compare to the first thing obviously that comes to mind is the Big Ben getting crashed into back in series 1, which is one of the great times that Doctor Who has done big spaceship spectacle in London.
Yeah.
And then compare with this, drunk is actually a great description for it. This is alien race who had, pardon the line here, too much to drink and just haven't handled it well.
All it's missing is a burning sofa somewhere.
I think the moment's interesting when the military kill the spider web ship thing, because of course it's playing off in the Christmas invasion where Harriet Jones and Torchwood destroy the Sycorax ship. It's like a mirror-y moment, but it's interesting what's different there is, well, I mean, they succeed both times. The first time, the Doctor 10 was so mad that they're killing the fleeing ship, and so Harriet Jones, the Golden Age is over and everything. Here, the Rachnos, deserves it. They're not fleeing, they're being aggressive and attacking. But we still, humans succeed at killing the ship.
We aren't using, stolen technology to do it either. It's just what looks to be like a real, actual tank, which I thought was impressive.
And 10 doesn't care at all, and I guess why would he care? He was genociding the Rachnos himself. It's just interesting, it's a similar beat, but it's played totally differently in this special.
I also think we're not really meant to care because it is there to plant the Mr. Saxon reference at the end, more so than anything else, really. And also just to get rid of the big thing in the sky. I think a few more explosions won't hurt anyone. It's not like a massive thematic thing the way the Sycorax incident was.
It comes off the back of the huge statement, which is this the first time 10 commits genocide?
He hasn't been alive that long, has he? So
I don't think he did in series 2, did he?
He did some shady stuff, but I don't think any of it was explicit. Oh, you know what? The Cybermen. Yeah. I mean, it's, hard to say if that counts, but
it's mass deletion.
But he turned all of their things on and made them all explode in horror, in personal pain and agony and horror at first. That was pretty fucked up.
Here, it's It's kind of the biggest character. Well, it is the biggest character moment of the episode.
He also, now that I think about it, threw every Dalek except for like 4 into hell.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, Daleks don't count. As much as they like to pretend they do, Daleks don't count. Okay.
Yeah.
It's they really cared about getting that moment right with 10 genociding the spiders. The close up towards the end where it seems like he's mouthing something after we keep cutting closer and closer to him. That was a pickup they did like ages later as well, because they were so concerned with we've got to get the sequence 100% right.
Big moment coming up for the Doctor here.
Yeah.
And your children a place in the universe to coexist. Take that.
Big moment. What? Talk us through this. Choices made.
Oh dear.
How dark did he go? Did you go as the Doctor?
Well,
I'm afraid I have to decline.
I think it was important that that the Doctor was caught by Donna here. I think it was important that the Doctor saw that he could lose control, that in this kind of post-Rose state, he's perhaps not as balanced and in control as he would wish to normally be.
Guess what I've got, Donna?
And so the carnage that he's about to create.
How did that fit in there?
They're bigger on the end.
Basically, I suppose what's important story-wise is that the Doctor realises he shouldn't be on his own.
Yeah.
Even though all his instincts at the moment are telling him to be.
And it's an extension of No Second Chances, isn't it? It's a darker, no second... you need that ruthlessness, that
Absolutely.
clarity.
Absolutely. Which comes out of a fairly dark place.
You did this.
And I think Rose had helped him come out of that dark place. And perhaps he's rediscovering it a little bit here.
And we've just had the
not
pocket
entirely
moment.
Healthy.
Pocket
We've just had the pocket moment, yeah.
I love that.
Which is...
that payoff to what was a gag. Or seemingly just a gag. Beautifully set up.
And of course, proves very handy.
So now water, we had a model shoot. I mean, it's all kicking off here. Model shoot, prosthetics, CGI. You've got your prac effects with your flame. It's all going.
Yeah.
And a pickup. We did a pickup.
Oh yes, the final
which
shot
was so
of this episode
important.
is
Thank
a big old
God
close-up,
we did
isn't
this. That close-up is worth every second it took to schedule it to get it.
I think it's great. I think it's the most memorable moment of this episode. Maybe it says a lot about his characterization, and a lot of later stuff kind of plays off this episode's moment there. And it's it's saying that if he's left alone, this is what he becomes, which is what Waters of Mars and all that stuff ends up riffing on. It's a really big moment for the character. Yeah, what do you guys think of that whole scene?
I think you're right. I think it's one of the most important characterization moments in New Who. When you compare it with what I keep thinking of is the coward or killer scene from the series 1 finale, which is like the polar opposite of this. Whereas this scene, if you ask me, this scene, you're still seeing echoes of it as late as like A Good Man Goes to War is basically all predicated on that scene of him standing there like a stranger, which is such a great line. While I often feel that the show can ironically go too far in this element, I do always like the idea of the danger of the Doctor and his abilities allowing him to sort of inflict his morality and his mood on the rest of the universe, basically. In large part, it's what makes the Master such a great threat. And of course, the Master is foreshadowed in this episode.
I will say, I mean, I respect that they tried extra hard to get that scene right, but could they not have ADR'd the Rachnos' lines to stop me from laughing my head off while that's happening? Because I think the whole thing, that's incredible. That's one of the most serious moments in the whole episode, and you've got the Rachnos going, "No, my children," no, like over and over and over and over. It really tips straight into bathos for me, and it really annoys me because I want to really get into that moment because it's a big fucking deal. It's just one of those things where why does the most serious moment have to kind of of be just slightly just pushed too far in one aspect. I just want the balance of tone to be like really right.
Well, it's because it's Davies.
Yeah. Also Christmas as well.
Yeah.
It's interesting you brought up coward or killer any day, which is like the Ninth Doctor saying genocide, no thanks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's moved on from the Time War where where in Davies' conception where he did that. It's so here, like the 10th Doctor, is he like regressing from that? If he's like,
I've been thinking about that. I've often thought about that. What precise moment he changes, and I think it comes down to Rose being his, like we were saying, his guiding star. She was. It's Donna says you need someone to keep you from going too far, and I think that in Bad Wolf Parting with the Ways, he's thinking. Maybe not in these exact words, but essentially what would Rose think if she saw this? And for that matter, that's what happens in Day of the Doctor. He needs Rose there to help him come up with another way.
I mean, that's the whole thing throughout series 1. That's happening, isn't it? Like in Dalek, you know, Rose is telling, what are you turning into? Like the whole idea is that Rose is actually bringing the Doctor back from this time war, making him better, making him like different. Mm-hmm. So, you know, he loses Rose and that starts to reverse like 100%. I mean, we mentioned the time war in this episode when he's about to, you know, he's intimidating the Arachnos. He announces himself as from Gallifrey.
Yeah.
And that's the moment that, you know, the Arachnos is like, oh my God, it's you, the Time Lord. You know, so his whole Time Lord, I did the Time War shit identity is, you know, he's really embracing that now, whereas earlier he wouldn't have.
What a recent tweet referred to as, I have 9 billion confirmed kills. No one has done more murder than me.
I mean, it's funny, we got the literal version of that many years later in The Doctor's Wife. Oh, fear me, I've killed all the Time Lords. He just says that like a quip.
That reminds me, I read somewhere, and I don't remember if this is true. Is this the first time that Gallifrey is mentioned in the new series?
Yes. Yep.
At Christmas. Ooh.
That does change the context of that moment. That's a big deal if you're a classic fan.
The climax, yeah.
And it's playing off the Martian thing all episode, where he keeps getting misidentified as a Martian. It's like him, it's kind of building up to the Voyage of the Damned moment. Like, no, I am from Gallifrey. I am a Time Lord.
I hate to keep going back to this. Well, they did that in Christmas Invasion too. The idea that normies would think aliens, oh, that's got to be Martians. And then a joke about the fact that Doctor Who has this enormous lore and continuity regarding Martians. So in a way, the Doctor saying, no, I'm not a Martian. I'm a Time Lord from Gallifrey. It's like Doctor Who announcing itself for the grand viewing public. This is what we're all about. We're all about weird lore and crazy genocides and loud music.
Darkness. And ultimately that's what the episode's kind of about, isn't it? Because the Arachnos and Lance to some extent represent that big picture, you know, humanity is nothing, we are gods, you know, we are greater than all of that. And the episode is about bringing the Doctor back down to Donna's level, you know, just those small human experiences and, you know, missing Rose and all that stuff. Hanging out at a party in the corner on your phone.
They don't know that I'm from Gallifrey.
It's funny to think, so this is the first time they say Gallifrey, so it's actually kind of starting to embrace sounds mean-spirited. Embrace sounds like he was being negative before. He's starting to include stuff from the wider show. And of course, Series 3 is when, Series 3 we see him again.
He's giving up on suppressing his power level, as they say.
Yeah. I remember it was a big deal in 2007 that we saw the 8th Doctor in the notebooks in the Human Nature episodes. Like, I mean, it's so obvious the 9th Doctor came after the 8th Doctor, but this was an argument by some people for some reason. Anyway, so it's this era the show's embracing.
Well, it's because everybody knows that Paul McGann doesn't count.
Well,
I don't even know what show that's from. That's the only scene from that show that I know. I think that's from Queer as Folk, isn't it?
Yeah. It's funny so the show's embracing a classic, wider Doctor Who to some degree now, but these years, 2006 to 2007 is when Doctor Who was like at an apex. Like the amount of shows that we're on right now, Doctor Who Confidential, Totally Doctor Who, Torchwood, you know, Sarah Jane was coming, you know, Invasion of the Bane.
What exactly was Totally Doctor Who? I've never been clear on that.
It's like a kids show, but they like get on the actors to interview and then they do silly like games.
Yeah, it had presenters and stuff and like I think you had a little set that stuff happened on. So one of those little kids morning...
It's a little more Blue Petery.
show. Yeah, sort of like
Yeah.
off-brand kind of like twisted, cracked mirror Blue Peter sort of show. There are quite a few of that type of thing.
That sounds so lame. Sorry, that was mean.
Doctor Who, it was in an apex right now, and I just think that's interesting. So I guess that's why they felt the confidence to start, now we can mention McGann, or now we can say Gallifrey, because look, we've Torchwood's going off and all these other things are happening. The show's working really well.
If people are willing to watch Torchwood, then they're willing to hear anything.
Torchwood is in this episode quite a bit, isn't it? I mean, they play the Torchwood theme at one point because they go into the Torchwood lab, and also at one point the Doctor stands on top of a tall thing and we see a cityscape a bit like Jack Harkness. That reminded me of that as well.
Yeah.
So that synergy is happening to quite a large extent already.
And people having sex with aliens.
Yeah, that is very Torchwood. And actually, even just like the basic thing of Donna getting stolen away from her wedding and trying to get a taxi back to the wedding, that comes back later on in Torchwood Series 2. It just feels like there's a bit of an overlap here. Like, Runaway Bride feels like proto or sort of quasi-Torchwood-esque in little ways.
I gotta be real here. We've talked this episode up. One thing I've always had a problem with. I had a problem with it the first time I watched it. I had a problem with it this time. The part where Lance runs off and grabs an axe and sneaks up on the Arachnos just to be like, "Hey, gotcha," is so fucking lame. I like the weird sort of foreshadowing element that he seems to know his way around the base pretty well, but it's just. I guess it's supposed to tie in with them both having a bad sense of humor, like the "this time it's personnel" line, which I am ashamed to admit I've laughed at every time I've seen it. It just seems like a very low quality prank by Doctor Who standards.
I think it announces itself so much. I think because like what it's trying to like build up to the betrayal of Donna like as much as it possibly can, and that's kind of the end goal.
So they gotta betray the audience too.
Yeah. You've got Donna really earnestly believing that he's going to do a heroic thing with this axe, so she starts talking to distract the Arachnos from Lance, supposedly, and she's doing a pretty good job. She's really putting her heart into it, and it's kind of endearing in a way. And it's just like the nature of what Lance is doing is so utterly like ridiculous and really like what the hell. So it's like, I guess it maximizes just the absurdity and just the banal crapness of Lance, I guess, as a person. And the Arachnos, I think, for going along with it as well.
I like that in this episode, the great terrifying alien threat is just sort of a jerk with a bad sense of humor. That's one of my favorite things about Doctor Who is humanizing aliens. And we all know somebody like the Arachnos Queen, or in my own case, are somebody like the Arachnos Queen.
I think in a way, it's kind of... I feel like we see this more than once in RTD's writing. Having the villain, even if they're an alien from the edge, who's come from the edge of the galaxy for vengeance or whatever, having them able to make really mean personal quips about the main characters. So like constantly going on about how Donna's a bride and like all the happy couple, even if like there's no real reason for them to care about any of this, but being able to actually write them like so vindictive that they can get personal like that with people they've never really met or have no particular reason to care about, it kind of lets the episode be more, I guess, emotionally driven, I think, at least in tone.
You just reminded me of one of my favorite Davros scenes. And it's from a shit episode. It's from, I forget which of the Daleks it was. It was the one with the Sixth Doctor on the graveyard planet. And Davros is like just ahead for most of the episode. And he's like whispering evil into some character's head about, "I can't believe that he treated you like that. Why, if someone did that to me, I would kill them." It's one of my favorite Davros moments. Him going a little bit more personal and appealing to someone's emotions, just seemingly to fuck with them. And that is one of my favorite things about Davies villains, is their ability to be petty and weird and personnel.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question about connecting to the genocide thing. Because when he's flooding the Arachnos and all that's happening, and when Donna tells him, "Well, you can stop now," what does she actually mean? Like, stop what?
I've been wondering that.
What do you think is being referred to there?
I think, well, it's clear from the greater text of the show and of what happens that what he means is you don't have to stand there and watch this happen. You can, we can leave now. But within the moment, as a character idea, it does seem like she's saying, okay, you can stop killing and destroying everything. Even though I don't think he can. I think he's done everything that he's gonna do. He's blown up all the little bauble things, right?
Yeah, he's opened the floodgates. I mean, literally, he's blown up the thing. He's let in all the Thames.
Literally, yeah.
So, I mean, stopping it would mean, like, blocking that up again somehow, which, you can't really do unless you can rebuild all those walls that you've bust. So, yeah, it does seem a little bit like... Yeah, I guess in practical terms, it can only be, okay, you can stop, like, watching this happen, I guess, and grimly angsting it up right next to the railing.
I guess if we want to marry what she's saying and thinking to the greater arc of the story, she could be saying, you don't have to let yourself be destroyed by this. We can get out of here. We don't have to all drown down here.
Yeah, especially I think that's a good point, because Turn Left reframes it as like, he could die here. So you can always, and you can start to see it as like maybe even a suicidal thing. Like, fuck this, I'm the oncoming storm. Rose has left me. I'm fed up with this world. You're tearing me apart, Lisa. That sort of thing. So I think totally it does make a lot of sense, I think, ultimately.
I also just remembered that in that scene, there's that hilarious moment where Donna swings across the room and misses what apparently the doctor thought she was going to land on the thing, and she just lands on her ass. I immediately thought of Rose in the first episode. There's a lot of little cute little references to Rose throughout the contrasts to her, and that one just immediately jumped to mind when you brought that scene up.
It's funny you say that. On the commentary, which is Julie Gardner and David Tennant and no one else, at the end where Donna's saying, no, I'm not going to travel with you, they're kind of framing it as, it's part of the strength of that moment is that it makes Rose seem stronger and Martha seem stronger and other companions seem stronger for being able to go travel with him.
So moving.
But of course, the doctor's about to get turned down, which she's not used to.
No.
What do you do with yourself now?
He's rather coy, he doesn't quite know how to ask the question.
And I'm not
but
I love this line about what you can do. I'm going to walk in the dust.
See a bit more planet Earth.
It just feels like that's so central to Doctor Who, about how you live your life and the adventure you have. And
Go out there and do something.
Well, you could always... Come with me.
Oh, poor Doctor.
Okay.
Actually, I don't think he's been turned down before. Usually he's fighting them off.
Everything we did today.
Which has got to be a bit of a shock for him in his present state.
But it's important she turns him down, because
course.
you've got to know that being a companion is dangerous and not for everyone, and there's a price to be paid for it.
Well, it also makes Rose and Martha more, and Sarah Jane and all the others, it makes them... Beautiful. It shows that they're extraordinary people.
And the music cue playing over here, Doomsday.
Of course, so it is.
A string to Doomsday.
I don't know.
And it's, of course, Partners in Crime changes Donna a bit and reframes Donna a bit, but it's...
Was that recorded before or after Partners in Crime? The commentary?
Way before. It was before this even aired, before Runaway even aired, so yeah. But...
It's so exciting. You know what I mean? It is so exciting. The things I really like are doing just the tiny little bits where David and I are a bit sparky with each other.
Sweet. I mean, you're not special, you're not powerful, you're not connected, you're not clever, you're not important.
This friend of yours, just before she left, did she punch you in the face? Stop bleeping me! The sort of little banterish bits, that's quite funny. God, you're skinny. This won't fit a rat.
It's such a laugh and a pleasure after Rose to write someone who doesn't want to be on board the TARDIS, who thinks it's a nightmare, and who thinks the Doctor's an idiot and a kidnapper and a fool.
It's funny how Donna is conceived of as a not companion in some ways in this episode, when she ends up being an extremely popular companion, extremely good companion.
It does, especially since her the resolution of her character arc in this episode is that she's going to go around traveling around, meeting people and seeing things, which is companion stuff. It's that potential companion thing, it's, but she's obviously such a good choice and obviously that's partially colored by the fact that she eventually becomes a companion. But I mean, you even got Catherine Tate and David Tennant becoming good friends on the episode during the filming. So it just seems like I love Martha, but it seems like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, it does seem like in stuff like having Cracked Mirrors of Rose, like the swing that ends in, farcically, comedically, and funny sound effects playing instead of a successful moment. It feels like it's in one sense it's doing like the anti-Rose. Like, okay, this is like the inverse of that companion idea that we've had before. But the fact that it just in doing that, it is also kind of showing how a companion might otherwise work. You can have a whole episode of Doctor Who that plays out like this. And maybe at this point, maybe you can't have every episode of Doctor Who play out with the companion as comic relief, sure. But it is exploring different territory for the show, and that is going to end up being important. So, as much as they might have shut it down and dismissed it, like, oh, she's not strong enough she can't be a companion. It does, eventually they kind of opened it up a bit more. We can bring Donna back, we can make her a companion, we can actually work with this.
It's at the end as well, we get, and this pays off in multiple ways, in multiple eras, actually, the Doc saying, yeah, I'll go have Christmas dinner with you, sure, and then he's lying and he goes to warp away. He had a Christmas dinner last Christmas special, and we know he eventually has many dinners with some of the people in that room. So interesting character beat there as well.
Look, he just can't fucking stand Sylvia Noble. I don't blame him.
Yeah, that whole bit really, really hits different in light of the 60th, I think. And just the way it's set up with how he misses Rose's family. Like, there was a kind of family that he had at one point and he lost that. And Donna's family is almost offered here as a possible substitute for that. That kind of comes back in a big way, of course. And also, even before that, after they've just gotten free of the whole crisis, they've drowned the Arachnos, it's all happened, it's all finished, Donna asks the Doctor, do you live every day of your life like that? Do you live your life like that every day? Is this non-stop for you? And the Doctor's like, well, basically. And that explicitly comes back. That exact thing is the point RTD makes eventually in the 60th.
Yeah.
With how the Doctor just is relentlessly doing all the shit. He doesn't stop to just have a normal, boring life like Donna. So in a way, like The Runaway Bride really does feel like the kind of the start of what the 60th wraps up. It's a thematic counterpart and or sort of they're interwoven. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking exactly that this time around. That it's really... I might as well just say it. I've always been a little bit of a Dr. Donna shipper. And I think that's visible in this episode. And I think whatever the nature of their relationship is, it settles by the end, by the 60th. And it's a great bookend. It feels like two ends of a grand arc across 15 years of 2.5 seasons across 15 years.
And it's nice that episodes can kind of become better retroactively, like still somehow, even ones this old. That's just the kind of show Doctor Who is.
Well, that's the magic of time travel.
Yes, exactly.
I guess Davies was jealous of how, Moffat has been making one of his best episodes in Series 4 even better over time. So might as well go back and show him how it's really done.
This is kind of linking back to an earlier thing, but in script revisions as the episode was getting developed, because we were talking about the big genocide shot, it might be interesting to pull out something from the script there. So when the Doctor's destroying the Arachnos and all that's happening, it was scripted as the Doctor, iconic shot.
So iconic.
He's holding the remote, the architect of destruction, and so aloof, so cold. Water pouring down foreground, around him flames belching upwards. He's surrounded by water and fire, like a god of the elements. Hold on him, almighty and unstoppable. He looks round, blinks, dazed, lost, as though for a second he's become someone else, someone terrifying.
That beat of him blinking and suddenly seeming lost, like he's someone else, is that in the episode? I feel like I don't remember.
It is, yeah.
Okay, sure. I mean, I just wasn't paying attention because of the Arachnos screaming distracted me.
Where the episode comes from is from the complete history book for the episode. It says the 2006 Christmas special for Doctor Who had begun life in early 2005 as an idea for the 6th episode of the 2006 series. The title was shared with a successful 99 romantic comedy movie starring Julia Roberts. However, following a request for 2 festive episodes, a few months later, Davis opted to save his idea for The Runaway Bride for the Christmas 2006 slot, with Tooth and Claw being dropped into the run instead.
Well, that makes sense if it wasn't originally even a Christmas premise. Yeah, that kind of explains the lack of Christmassiness, yeah.
Yeah.
In his original idea for The Runaway Bride, The Doctor and Rose were faced with a bride appearing in the TARDIS, which led to a screwball episode built around the car chase sequence, a notion originally given to writer Toby Whithouse for the Sarah Jane Smith story, which became School Reunion. Davis had in mind the basic plot with the elements of the bride, the strange particles, and the vast spiders for some time, and at an early stage considered setting the climax at Stonehenge until this proved cost prohibitive.
Yeah, I heard that somewhere, that and it just doesn't have as good a resolution as draining the whole Thames down on it.
Also, can't see this episode working with another, like with Rose in it, like with the Doctor already as a duo. It just, it just seems like it would just be over-egging, I think, to have Doctor and Companion and the bride, Catherine Tate, well, not necessarily Catherine Tate in this original conception of it. But I don't know, it just seems like the version we got sounds better than the version that they were mulling over back then.
For sure, yeah.
If we're getting archaeological, another script remnant, this is from when it was the Christmas episode, this is like an earlier version of the one we got, that I think is interesting, and it's with Lance, is... explaining why he joined forces with the Empress, Lance originally told the Doctor, "There I was, working in the city every day. I was climbing that ladder. Then it happened. Your Cybermen, your Daleks in the sky. Everything I'd spent my life doing seemed so small. What the Empress could give him was not power, not money. That's down there with the small stuff." As he declared that all they needed was his bride, Lance said to the Doctor, "You can be downsized."
Interesting. So he's like a corporate version of Rose.
I am really curious about how the Rachnos approached Lance, like, in the first place. How did they first get put in contact?
I've always fucking wondered that.
Because that seems like it was such a fascinating little detail. Like, the kind of thing you could just throw in, like, one line about and just really set our imaginations racing. But, yeah, it's not in there.
It has to have been over, like, the phone or voice or something. Because you want to... I've read Childhood's End. You need to ease into the giant, demonic, bright red alien thing. You got to start off with, "Hey, I'm from space. Check me out."
Yeah, sort of like the catfish effect. You want to lure them in, with a fishing reel, and then you kind of build up to it
until he's caught in the web.
And I imagine Lance was very excited once he actually saw it.
But yeah, that's very similar to Rose's motivation in Series 1, which all goes in with my feeling of him as being like the cracked mirror version of the Companion. Not in the same way that Adam was. He does have the same sort of underlying wonder about things that motivates most companions. I almost said he's almost like an evil version of Claire. That's mean.
So that would make Donna his Mickey, wouldn't it? If Lance is the Rose analog. Yeah. Interesting to get it from her perspective.
Yeah, she is his Mickey. It's you could almost see it as the Doctor if the Doctor had bonded with Mickey instead of Rose.
You're talking about similarities and parallels and things like that. I have a point I wanted to get to that springs off that. Well, to set this up, I'll start with the positives. In the writer's tale, when Russell's talking about the episode, he's saying, "Any moment that's only 90% we work at, try this, try that, cut it faster, lose that line, add music, play it off David, emphasize Catherine during that bit of dialogue to make it 100%. Russell says, he's talking to Ben Cook, of course, "Any moment that's only 50% will move heaven and earth to cut. You sharpen and concentrate it until you like it. The more you watch something, the more you like it, the more you forgive it, the more inclined you are to accept its faults. And that's why you have to remember the impact of that very first viewing always. The most awful viewing was the first edit for The Runaway Bride, because the director and his editor hadn't had time, in a tricky episode with that motorway chase and everything, to put on any music. We always watch with temporary guide tracks like movie scores and things. It was the flattest hour of Doctor Who ever, particularly when it's supposed to be a big blousy Christmas episode. The music is so vital to this version of the show. God, that was dispiriting. I was gutted. It was like watching an episode where David has a bag over his head." So that's all setting up. The music's really important, and Gold's so important for the show and everything like that. So Murray Gold says that we needed a song, he's talking about Love Don't Roam. We needed a song that reflected the Doctor's inner thoughts while also being something you could imagine a crowd at a wedding dancing to. And, they talk about who recorded the song, everything like that. The thing is, the song, you know how much I love Murray Gold. the song is really, really similar to a song called The Snake. Like, it's really, really, really similar. Like, really similar.
Just plagiarized is what you're saying.
It feels like, in some ways, like a cover version. I don't have any huge point there. It's just something interesting about the song.
Well, yeah, we've stolen the title of the episode. You might as well steal some other shit, you know. We've stolen the guest star from elsewhere on British television.
Well, I've roamed about this earth with just a suitcase in my hand. And I've met some bug-eyed Joes, I've met the blessed, I've met the damned. But of all the strange, strange creatures in the air, at sea, on land, oh my girl, my precious girl, I love you, you understand.
On her way to work one morning, down the path alongside the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor half-frozen snake. His pretty colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. Oh, well, she cried, I'll take you in and I'll take care of you. Take me in, oh, tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, tender woman. Sighed the snake.
Yeah. Stealing music, I mean, God love Murray Gold, but I mean, if you go looking back, you can find a lot of tracks that sound an awful lot like I Am the Doctor.
It's probably better that he plagiarized himself than that he plagiarized other artists.
Oh, if you don't know, there are at least a few songs out there, some of them as far back as the 80s, that are fucking bang on I Am the Doctor.
I think there's only so many.
It's an arpeggio. They all sound like that.
Yeah. It feels worse to me for like pop songs like Love Don't Rhyme, because I think there's so much, it's a simpler sort of thing you're doing than an orchestral piece like I'm the Doctor. So it feels a little more blatant to me when it's like a sung song, but yeah. Anyway, in December of 2026, when RTD was getting interviewed, he was pushing back on how some people had been conceiving of The Runaway Bride, because he said, one thing that people have been saying is that it's like a comic relief sketch, but it's not. It's a proper hour-long drama, and Catherine Tate has a proper part.
Oh, yeah. This is not a comedy sketch.
So those accusations of it being like a comic relief sketch, were they from people who'd watched the episode and were like criticizing it? Or was that assumptions about what it was going to be like? So was this before or after?
Assumptions.
Oh, just based on the casting, I got you. The famous sketch of Catherine Tate as her teen character, whose name I don't remember, being befuddled by David Tennant's accent. Was that a Children in Need sketch, or was that?
I can't remember if it was Comic Relief or Children in Need. It was one of those, and they're kind of basically kind of the same thing. So not that huge a distinction.
Only just now, the second that you said that, did I discover that those aren't literally the exact same thing.
Well, there you go. Yeah,
it was Comic Relief. Comic Relief.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so I can see why there was a concern there, but that's foolish. Obviously, Davies is, of course, going to make something silly and maybe a little bit embarrassing, but that's why we watch it. You know, I'm not saying that Davies is a bad writer or anything like that. I'm saying that he has an incredible sense of embarrassment, of discomfort, and how to use it. That's what I like most about Davies. That's why I so love his most sadistic works, because they're so intensely uncomfortable.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite things about him, and there's a great sense of discomfort in this episode, and some of it is like the idea of, oh, I can't believe I'm watching this with my family, and they're seeing that this is what my favorite show is like. But that's because Davies is having fun with it, you know? And sometimes we get so wrapped up in it that we can't have fun with it. We're just a bunch of idiots, and we need someone there to pull us back.
That reminds me, you're talking about like the contrasts with the episode and the experience of it, and things that can impinge on the fun. A little anecdote to do with the episode airing. So the episode was repeated on BBC One at 1:50 a.m. on the morning of Sunday, 31 of December, as part of the Sign Zone. This was the first time that an episode of Doctor Who had been screened by the BBC with in-vision sign language interpretation for the deaf. I'm reading from the Complete History book here. First time sign language interpretation for the deaf, on this occasion performed by Kate Holdher. During this screening, a caption was superimposed, directing viewers to BBC Two for breaking news on the execution of Saddam Hussein.
Oh my, what the? Oh my god, that's such a Britain moment, isn't it? Oh my god. Even just the strangeness of why do that at 2 a.m. But also, just I mean, there's just so many whys in there, just knotted together. Just that weird, just utter entanglement with like violence in the Middle East. It's like, oh god. Yeah, I mean, really, that is preempting the whole. Like, it's a different level from the Graham Norton interruptions, isn't it? the Saddam Hussein interruptions. Yeah, I would love if someone had recorded that. You know, that belongs up there with like the Max Headroom incident or like, those weird Doctor Who interruptions, like weird cursed little artifacts of re-airings that have been like squirreled away in the historical archive.
Yeah.
You know, on the topic of things getting brought into Doctor Who and people complaining, like like people complaining that it will be a comic relief sketch because Catherine Tate's here. Or people complaining that, you know, if you've got a pop star like Billy Piper in the show, he's going to make the show stupid or bad or something like that. That seems to be an eternal running theme, isn't it? Because when we start hearing that there might be like a musical in the new RTD era, people are like, no, I hate musicals, it's going to be cringe, no.
Oh, there's going to be goblins.
No, you can't put goblins in Doctor Who, no. Yeah, it's like every single time, there just seems to be this weird reaction, like across all the years. Whenever something is brought in, suddenly there's this idea that Doctor Who will be corrupted by this and ruined by this. Yeah. As if Doctor Who can't like assimilate basically everything and anything, as if it hasn't shown over and over and over that it just absorbs other things and makes them into Doctor Who rather than being corrupted.
Can't have the Doctor kissing.
No, we can't have kissing and sex in it. No. Yeah, every single time.
On the other hand, the sonic sunglasses, those were an abomination.
Oh, truly, how could they do that to us? How could they do that to poor Capaldi, forcing him to wear the sunglasses? It was elder abuse. It was evil. It was not fair. Yeah, it always escalates to the level of to quite dramatic degrees.
It's just what Davis taught us.
It's because we're all fucking nerds, and nerds get like a fucking comfort zone, and then do not want to venture a single fucking foot outside of it. And it's because we're all just there's something about how we adapt to situations that's slightly different, and as a result, we panic over the craziest and stupidest things.
Yeah, a good contrast with that is I think it's kind of shown in in the motorway chase scene when the Doctor's trying to get Donna to jump into the TARDIS. In the passing cars, there are those shots of the kids, like in the windows, watching it happen, and they're shouting through the window, they're shouting at Donna, like, jump, jump! And they're cheering on Donna.
Yeah, they're playing the audience.
Yeah, exactly, that's the audience. And when she finally makes it, they're cheering and they're so happy. And I found that so sweet. And I think what it is because that kind of audience has instant empathy for what's happening without needing the context, without needing all the rules and stipulations and carefully, arranged, like, logics of what's happening. They just accept what is the story, what are the emotional beats of the story that's happening in front of them. And there's something so heartwarming about that, the fact they can do that, the fact that compassion is just there as these strange random passing children. And it's such a far cry from just the judgmentalness with which kind of Doctor Who fans often approach the show. And even people who aren't fans, even people who only hear about the show in passing in the news, are like, oh, it's gone to the dogs, I see. Just that instinctive judgment that comes in.
It's getting woke now.
And you can see RTD really, I guess, celebrating just the, maybe the ability of children, maybe not always the exercised ability, but certainly the ability of children to just accept things. And he's kind of saying, hey, that's kind of how you as an audience should be. That's my ideal audience right there.
I love that scene, yeah. Russell told BBC Radio Wales back in the day that I've always wanted to do the TARDIS chasing a car down the motorway. When I was a kid, we'd go on summer holidays and I used to imagine the TARDIS flying alongside the cars. Yeah, I did that too as a kid. I think that's a common thing lots of kids do. You imagine something, if not the TARDIS, something like bopping along.
Running alongside.
The cars or the scenery, yeah.
And what's really cool is that it kind of makes out that the TARDIS flying like that is unusual. So the Doctor has to actually MacGyver this whole thing with like strings and hooks and levers and pulleys and stuff to actually even just to make that happen. So it's made kind of special thing in its own way. It's not just okay, the TARDIS just does this normally. It's like, no, this is actually crazy that this is happening. It's really fun and wild.
I love the visual effect of it flying along too. Is that it looks like there's a hand very high above it holding it on a string, and it's bobbing along. It doesn't look like it's not like flying along like a cool sci-fi spaceship. It looks like the old special effects would have if they'd been able to better hide how the effects were being done. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the sense of physics to it is quite tangible, and the way they show it crushing a car underneath it by accidentally landing a bit too much. So it doesn't feel like a spaceship being piloted. It does feel like this weird like thing dangling, like a little toy or something, a prop dangling from a high point and just being dragged along. Yeah, it feels quite. It's very madcap. I think that's the fun of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the physicality of him with the string and like operating the TARDIS that it makes it feel so grounded and like it's actually happening. I love that. That's a big emotions sequence because there's lots of energy, there's lots of excitement, your heart's beating faster. On a similar note, I really love, it's kind of contrived, but the Huon particle stuff, the reason she gets sucked into the TARDIS is because she was all like hormoned up because on your wedding day, you're like a pressure cooker of chemicals. I like that. I think that's a cool kind of domesticy emotions mixing with Doctor Who-y stuff. I think that's fun.
And it gives the opportunity for the Doctor to say something sort of insensitive and get smacked.
Yeah.
From the author's perspective, like that's a good bit of mechanic to use, I think. Having a plot device that can respond to the emotions of a human being is kind of how you can like weave together all like the sci-fi shit and the human shit, and it's very easy to hand wave and just do like that. The moment they show her getting sucked up, the fact that while screaming, she's still walking along the aisle, that's one of the enduring, bizarre little details of the episode, but it is quite funny. And in light of the fact that she's getting sucked up because she is so excited about walking down the aisle, it almost kind of makes sense. She's experiencing such elation walking down the aisle that she just screams her head off.
I always thought it was weird that the Huon particles and the energy they give off looks and sounds, not just looks but sounds, like regeneration. I was wondering if that was supposed to be a red herring or if that's just lack of creativity is maybe the wrong word to use, but you know what I mean? It feels like we're playing the same special effect files.
If there's a link at all, the Huon particles, they are made out to be from the Dark Times, and that's a thing that came back later. And in the Dark Times, I mean, that was when, I guess, not necessarily the Dark Times, but the Rachnos and the whole history there is kind of tied in with Gallifrey a little bit, because the Rachnos blames the Time Lords for what they did to the Rachnos and all of that. So the Huon particles are kind of this primordial thing. They are kind of like regeneration energy a little bit, because they represent that ancientness.
They're like evil Artron energy.
Yeah, exactly. So I think having a similar kind of special effect to regeneration does make a bit of sense if you squint, if you bend around the corner.
I guess, yeah. I don't have a problem with it. It's interesting. It's very eye-catching, especially because that sound effect, the high-pitched hum that plays, is so I guess maybe not as much now. I mean, not as much when the episode came out, but nowadays it's so intensely tied to regeneration on Doctor Who that just like playing a little bit of that clip immediately puts you in the mind of, oh shit, somebody's going to turn into somebody else. I suppose in large part that could be the fault of Stephen Moffat and Series 6, where I think it plays in 5 episodes or something. Yeah, I guess actually when this episode came out, that sound had only played once. It's a weird thing to think that there's a time when regeneration was still unique.
Yeah, like a rare thing that people didn't expect and weren't used to or familiar with. So many other things were like that in the show, like a companion departing, like Rose.
Yeah, it's a view of a darker time.
Did you notice the Rachnos says it was hibernating at the edge of the universe?
Yeah, so that's come back as well on the 60th, isn't it? Archie likes his edge, but not the edge some people wanted him to bring back, just a different kind of edge.
The Rachnos, did they do anything wrong? They're born hungry.
I've been wondering that since I first watched this episode. I believe I was even aware of this episode before I saw it and was considering that. I think that the Doctor was within his right to stop them from being born, but morally, I don't think that Rachnos babies it can be held morally responsible for eating. That being said, the Doctor does give the offer of, I can take you to another planet where you can have presumably their own food source that's not a sentient, race.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a lot to presume, but when you put it that way, the Rachnos Empress has a good point that it's their planet. This is kind of a speed run of the Silurians. This is like every Silurian story all in one go in the space of like a third of a Christmas special.
I think the fact that the Doctor made that offer to move them safely away from Earth and doesn't actually do it, he just kills them all instead, that kind of weights his decision, doesn't it? The fact that theoretically it might be possible for him to have preserved their lives and respected the sanctity of those Rachnos babies things, and it doesn't, it's just like, fuck it, drown them, kill it with fire or with water in this case.
I guess he's just, the brig is just rubbed off on him too much.
I think in terms of like the ethics of the Rachnos or whatever, I think them having created the Earth as part of their schemes, I guess, to hide their little hive or whatever it is, I think in light of that, the fact that life forms sprung up on the Earth as a result, I think, if you're, certainly if you're following any kind of code of ethics that the Doctor claims to follow, respecting the sanctity of those later emerged life forms is kind of important, isn't it? So, just the fact that you made the Earth doesn't give you a right to just murder and consume everything that grows on it later. You kind of have to, like, deal with, it's kind of your fault that those beings kind of sprung up into existence.
You have responsibility.
Yeah, your responsibility, not your dinner.
Do we have, like, a sense that it has to be a sentient creature that Rachnos eats in order to mature? Sometimes on Doctor Who that sort of thing comes out, it has to be intelligent, but I don't feel like there's anything, like, we could have just given the Rachnos all the sheep in the British Isles and they'd probably have been fine.
They mention the sort of stuff that the Rachnos would eat, don't they? I swear there's something like that. There's some sort of dialogue. When we find out what the Rachnos are. Oh, here we go. Right, the Rachnos come from the Dark Times, blah, blah, blah. They were carnivores, omnivores. They devoured whole planets. Interesting. So maybe they could eat things other than humans. It certainly seems like they have a wide appetite.
That line, I was thinking of that line. It reminds me of like the fucking Tyranids from 40K. Are they saying that it feels... Because the Rachnos queen seems like she's intelligent, she's able to not eat everything for apparently billions of years. So I don't know. I don't know to what extent an individual Rachnos can be reasoned with. I don't know to what extent they need to eat things. It's that line always makes it sound like they literally eat like down to the crust.
Yeah, certainly what it sounds like. I mean, but obviously it could be like a non-literal, oh, they just devoured the people on those planets. But again, saying it like whole planets makes it sound like they just eat everything. Like they just eat everything. And later on, we get the stuff about how the fledgling empires went to war against the Rachnos. They were wiped out. So it's kind of like this thing. This was such a problem that entire, maybe multiple civilizations were just hell bent on wiping these things out.
Yeah, but and again, this is bringing in lore that already existed at the time, but maybe it's impolite to bring in Time Lord lore for this conversation. But they have a history of going after other civilizations, and while they always seem to have a good reason for it at the time, it's always really shady in retrospect.
Yeah.
We got the great vampires, we got the Fendal or Fendaline or whatever they were called. The Divergent Universe arc had come about at this point. I mean, that didn't come out of nowhere,
Yeah, whenever we hear about like the ancient history or when the Time Lords were forging the universe stuff, it's always just like, okay, so these people are doing imperialism in space, basically.
Yeah.
And we're just like celebrating their conquests because they got rid of all the bad aliens for us. Yay, woohoo.
Yeah.
Maybe some things to ask questions about there.
It would be interesting to have, I guess, Regeneration Impossible sort of teased this. The idea of like what's what I'm looking for here? Like a nice is the wrong word, but like a relatable character who happens to also be one of those lost species, like the Fendaline or the Rachnos.
Yeah, to see like the other side, because you get these species that are defined as ontological evils that must be removed. Yeah,
the anti-colonial perspective on Time Lord conquests during the Dark Times, which is always, I feel like, the missing element. Doctor Who in general has always had a very monolithic view of cultures, and that's so antithetical, I feel, to the ethos of the program, that like every Khaled is the worst person you've ever met. You know, there's no nice Khaleds. There's barely even any nice Thals.
Yes, the Thals are all pacifist sissies who can't even fight the Daleks, or, you know, and until they like drop down a pit or something.
I was thinking of in Genesis, where they're all fucking.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, but yeah, I just watched the Daleks in color a couple weeks ago. That's actually my first time watching the whole episode story.
Well, okay, that is kind of what it's intended as. So I suppose I can't really fault you for that.
Yeah. Don't worry, I could tell. It was a fucking mess.
It's very, very different. This seems to come every time we record something now, this comes up, and I end up doing this thing like, hey, the colour version and the original story, they're totally different. Because it's much more a remix than it is a simple condensed edit.
Really has me dreading if they ever do the War Games.
Isn't that what they're doing next? I feel like I heard that.
I hope they're not doing the War Games next. Oh, God. That's my favorite. I would rather them do, you know what would actually would benefit would be the Invasion, because there's a few chunks out of that you could drop and nobody would miss them.
Yeah, and it's also kind of a bombastic invasion. It's an invasion. It's called the Invasion. It's an invasion story. I think that speaks to modern audiences pretty easily, because that's the kind of Doctor Who that they recognise from RTD as well.
Yeah.
To talk about Donna, when she turns 10 down at the end of the episode, how do you take that? Like, obviously Partners in Crime tinkers with that moment. And Donna's she's a character that gets tinkered with a lot, isn't she? Because then the Star Beast tinkers with what Joni Zen did to her. Do you think what Partners in Crime does to Donna evolves naturally out of... It's character retconning is like a ridiculous concept. That's not what I mean. But do you feel if we'd never seen Donna again, do you just believe that she would have went off and traveled and been a better person? Or does the Partners in Crime thing feel like a very organic evolution to you? Just how do you take the non-companioning of her?
The problem that I have with it is the problem I often have with these sorts of potential companion departures, is unless you have some hard specific reason why they don't join up with the Doctor at the end, it always feels like a weasel to have them not join up. It's simply production realities. You know, we already have a cast member, we don't need another one, or it would be impractical for us to bring on this actor or actress to be the new companion, so we need to kick him down the road. And it goes all the way back to the classic series. They did exactly the same thing a dozen times. You know, what was her name before Ace?
Mel.
No. Well, yeah. No. It doesn't matter. But it is the sort of thing that just has kept happening throughout the series, and you live with it, because Doctor Who, at the end of the day, is a television program and not always going to be made the way you want it to be made. And they're not always going to pick the actor that you want to be the next companion. And hopefully that's because, you know, you don't even know what you want out of the next companion. I felt like what they did in Partners in Crime was a very savvy way to bring her back in, to say, well, in the end, it turned out that traveling around wasn't actually all that practical, so I might as well hop in a magic space box. But at the time, watching The Runaway Bride, it feels like she's just turning him down simply because we can't afford Catherine Tate for a whole season, especially when we've already, contracted Freeman Agman.
I think they kind of make a sop to justifying her not coming on, because they reference the fact that he scared her when he was doing that shit with Arachnos. Like, she was like, what the hell is this? This is some kind of unpredictable godlike creature who can just do all kinds of things, who could just do the most insane shit. So but also I think it kind of makes sense that having supposedly made that decision out of, I'm kind of scared of this, you would think later, oh my god, how did I turn that down?
Yeah.
How did I let myself be scared of that? Like, that would be so much cooler than what's actually happening to me right now. I really wish I said yes. So I think I think both versions kind of make sense to me in the end.
Yeah.
Speaking of the ending, I love how it ends on that incredibly serious, solemn note of her name was Rose. And then, like, before barely, 2 seconds have passed, the TARDIS does the stupidest looking special effect you've ever seen and flies off into the air with, trails, jet trails on it. Really, really abruptly. It doesn't look organically. It doesn't actually look like a rocket taking off. It just looks like someone's just, like someone's clicked on it and just dragging it into the sky.
Yeah. It's the opposite of the earlier scene on the freeway.
It looks so awkward. And that's the ending of the episode. That's the last note that they leave everyone with. It's just so annoying when you get a moment of that, genuinely pathos, and it just immediately just tips over into comical.
Yeah, that and probably the worst use of fake snow in the history of Doctor Who. I can't say that for certain, but some of the worst fake snow in the whole Davies era. I remember I read recently that he's upset now that health and safety means that he can't use the old fake snow.
That's right.
Thank fucking God. It didn't even look good in standard definition. Can you imagine how that shit would have looked in high definition?
Maybe it doesn't actually excite the atmosphere. Maybe what the TARDIS does is it really just does shoot up like a ball of dust and just let that fall over everything. And the Doctor's like, yeah, it's snow.
Yeah, it's actually just the Rachnos dust.
Yeah.
It's just the dust from the Rachnos ship.
I do like that it's a kind of a firework looking thing that also turns into snow. Like, we've combined Christmas and New Year. That's pretty novel.
I like that. I would like that. That's a pleasant Doctor Who-y idea of fireworks that rain down snow. It's like mountains that sway in the breeze.
There's a big moment in the episode we haven't talked about, I just remembered, and it really stings this one. We've talked about the Love Don't Roam scene, but what that's coming off the back of is that they have the wedding reception without Donna.
I love that. Oh, that's mean, but in the funny way. That's a cruel element to introduce, but it's cruel in a very funny way, I think. That and her fiance is dancing with Neris.
Neris, yeah.
I think mean in the funny way is a good way of describing kind of this whole style of humour that RTD goes for, with Donna and the world around her.
Yeah.
It is like that kind of that slight cruelty and absurdity. But it's kind of it's the kind of hapless character who's getting shat on by life, but we kind of laugh anyway because it's just so outlandishly mean, and everyone's just so outlandishly dismissive of her that it's almost it's like a sympathetic but also kind of cruel, kind of pointing and ha kind of Schadenfreude type thing.
Yeah. It's just this side of cringe comedy, and it's on the side that I prefer because I have no tolerance for cringe comedy.
But then shortly after, you kind of get the flip of that, which is that Donna, they're all starting to blame Donna and go after Donna, and she just she turns on the waterworks and fools all of them, and she winks at the Doctor while she's doing it. So, because the thing is, these people, they might, dismiss Donna as stupid and banal, but they're just as shallow. They can be fooled by the most trivial of antics, and in a way, she is kind of smarter than them because she can do that, and they can be fooled by it.
Thinking about it, her whole story really did need a Wilf figure. And her dad, I don't even remember him having any particular lines in the episode. So her father is such a non-character that, I know the backstory about why he's not in the later elements. I'm not saying thank God the actor died, but it was very savvy to put Wilf into her part of the story to give her that figure to rely on,
Yeah, I think an element of warmth in Donna's life is really important.
Well outside the scope of this episode, but I suppose the closest thing that Rose would have had to that sort of warmth in her life is Mickey.
I suppose the absence of a figure like that, a figure like Wilf, is kind of, it just epitomizes the difference between Donna as conceived here as this comedy character kind of playing off this kind of mean style of comedy, versus Donna as a companion, which she has to have an actual, honest to God, warmly fleshed out life around her, not just these shallow archetypes. So you need actual humanity in there.
Yeah, I think you're right.
What do you think of Sylvia in this episode?
She's a lot softer than she would later on be. For all that talk about meanness, she's much nicer to Donna here than she is, possibly because it's her, big day. But in my experience, that's when that sort of shit usually comes out.
Yeah, I think in this episode, because like everyone there at the wedding reception is kind of dismissive of Donna and mean to Donna, Sylvia doesn't stick out that much. I think the point is more that like everyone in Donna's life is kind of having this kind of shallow relationship with her. So it's not so much putting a huge amount of focus on Sylvia herself. That comes in, once she's actually one of the only main figures around Donna.
Yeah.
So yeah, Sylvia doesn't stick out here as much as she does. She's just kind of she's just part of the vaguely sort of outlandish ensemble around Donna. Fascinating arc she's gone on over the years, isn't it? So different.
Plus, of course, later on, she's an RTD companion mother, and they have a whole different level of whatever the fuck is going on there.
Yeah.
I was going to say that Moffat doesn't really do that, but of course, none of Moffat's companions have mothers. Some of them have they all have maternal figures, but they're barely connected to their stories.
One of them becomes a mother, but doesn't actually have one who matters to any real degree.
Yeah, that's true. In fact, the one who becomes a companion mother I believe she also slaps the Doctor.
Yes, she does. Well, actually, maybe I might be mixing it up with her slapping Rory. Fuck, I don't remember now. she slaps Rory so many times.
Well, that's fine. Rory is a Doctor figure in Moffat lore.
Are we running out of stuff?
It's a good episode.
It is good.
It was fun to watch it again, especially after the 60th. It's a very good follow-up watch.
Totally.
And it's it's fun to get back in the Christmas special spirit. I can't imagine what Church on Ruby Road, where we've got the main characters are at a club on Christmas Day, which I mentioned this elsewhere. Maybe I'm really boring, but I can't imagine going to a club on Christmas Day. Christmas Eve, maybe.
Oh, well, it could be Christmas Eve. We don't actually know yet, do we?
It's Christmas Day. It's Davies. It's always day. I think the only one of his that doesn't take place right on Christmas Day is the next Doctor takes place over like a couple days, doesn't it?
I would say I hope RTD's next Christmas special is more like The Runaway Bride than his other ones. I think Runaway Bride is a pretty good model for an RTD Christmas special, and maybe there aren't that many of those around. So I would hope, like, if it's referencing it, if it calls back to any of them, I hope it's this one.
Well, I mean, we say that, but in a few days' time, we could very well be watching the Prime Minister shooting down a flying goblin ship with a laser beam.
And that wraps up our discussion of The Runaway Bride. Let us know what you think of this episode, what we had to say about it, and yeah, Merry Christmas to all of you at home. Cheers.